Welcome to On the Line. I'm Jenny Robb, and if you're tuning back in, we are continuing our series with Frank Giampaolo as we go through his book, The Psychology of Tennis Parenting. He, of course, is the author and author of many other books. The Tennis Parents Bible is a great one, just off the top of my head there, but he's also, exciting news, coming out with a set very soon of what we're sort of calling, or he's sort of calling, the tennis encyclopedia, and it's going to be a set of books that you can buy in a bundle, and we're super excited about bringing that to you. And so that is coming soon. You heard it first here. Frank is, of course, a worldwide industry leader, and has worked with everyone from top players to high school players, and his insights are invaluable. So welcome back, Frank. Glad to have you as always.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. So we are diving into chapter 8. The title of the chapter is Change Equals Improvement. And the quote is, "Everything measurable can be improved." So describe for us how you got to this chapter.
Well, as we're going deeper into this book, I think it's this is going to be one of those meaningful chapters that actually spurs the growth that you as parents need, but also the athletes need. And we'll talk a little bit about why doing things like, quantifying the data, and why maybe doing things like charting or stats or even match play video analysis will help your athletes. And look, I think it's important to know when we start, there's a really big difference between players that want to be normal kids and then players that want to be top college athletes. Mm-hmm. And it's two very different pathways. Neither one of them is right or wrong.
That's right.
But I think if your child has a desire to play college ball or beyond, we have to make sure that they have the correct developmental plan in place. So it's not just a dream that they never really achieve. So
yes,
you need the plan. Parents need the plan.
That's right.
There we go.
Parents need the plan.
Yes.
So our first section, and this one really rung home for me, and it's avoidance versus exposure. You write, "Although avoidance can lead to temporary relief from anxiety, the avoidance approach typically creates deeper fear in the future. By putting off solutions, athletes unknowingly multiply their anxiety about the topic." And I think this is a huge deal, because I do think that the avoidance part is so common. So tell us a little bit more about avoidance. What would a player be doing? What would that look like if they're following this avoidance idea?
Well, I think if when we talk about avoidance versus exposure, there's flaws and benefits in each side of that topic, really. But if they have too much exposure to things like poor choices and poor habits, that's going to derail them way more than the excuses most junior athletes make when they really do lose a match. They start to say things like the opponent cheated, or it was too windy, or right, I couldn't prepare because I had to get my nails done, that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
So really, it goes down to the inside levels of the athlete, and looking deep inside and say, well, what poor choices, what poor habits, can I actually change to get the results I'm capable of getting? And then exposure, of course, what we want to do is try to have the athletes customize it. But if they don't like playing pushers or retrievers in tournaments, it's wise to get exposure to that exact stimuli, right, in practice sessions.
That's
right.
They
have to go with, so instead of like rallying back and forth in the academy and grooving your normal strokes, that's not going to ever help beating a pusher. they have to practice the patterns to disrupt that style, like short angle return of serves, which pulls the opponent to the side fence and opens up the court, or being able to do things like drop shots and passing shots and lobs and swing volleys when the opponent's vulnerable and they throw up that moon ball going in 5 steps instead of backing up 5 steps. And you know, when you see your athlete, when they back up and start playing the moon ball game with the moon baller, whose game are they playing, right? They just aborted their real style usually, and now they're playing the opponent's style, which is probably disastrous. So I think avoidance versus exposure is a question you could ask your child almost every day. Do you need more avoidance or more exposure to that?
And we're really, I felt like as I was reading this chapter, we're really, like you mentioned a moment ago, we're really getting deeper into it. You know, I mean, this chapter kind of really brought it, like I said, brought it home to me that, you know, we're taking it to a higher plane, you know, as far as intelligence on the court and self-awareness and these things that we've spoken about before, all leading up to these things in each chapter. You go on to say in this section that exposure strategies are more proactive. They lead to a way out of the drama while minimizing stress in the future. And I just, again, I think that is so important when you're giving this idea of exposure versus avoidance. And I think you have to kind of change your thinking a little bit, you know, open your mind a little bit to go, okay, avoidance versus exposure. What does that really, really mean? And so I think, you know, you do a great job when we get to the solution part of this section. You say start the conversation by acknowledging that you feel anxious about a particular topic, and then ask them, being the athlete, about their true feelings towards the issue, and let them know that you want to support them and enjoy your time together through their tennis journey. And, you know, I just think that this is such an important tenet for the parents to really take hold of. So let's talk a little bit more about that conversation. Acknowledging what you feel anxious about and wanting the child, giving the child the freedom to speak freely in a way, not just say what the parent wants to hear.
Right.
You know, so true feelings. I like that, you know, I like to those pickup words that to me mean so much when you say their true feelings towards that issue, and then let them know you want to support them and enjoy your time together through the journey. And I just think that's beautiful, and it's such an opportunity that many parents may be missing right now or missed with their young athletes. And so I love that you're putting this out there as like another part of this guide for parents, going, this is really important stuff, you know, the true feelings about a topic, really getting down to the nitty-gritty of what makes you anxious, you know, identifying what it is that is the drama, as you would say, what is instigating that drama. And let's sort of dive into that a little bit. That's a parent-child conversation that a child might remember their whole life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it is truly, this is one of those life affecting, you know, moments if you really, you know, get the gravity of this. So let's dive in also into what that conversation might look like between a parent and a child as the solution to avoidance versus exposure.
Well, look, it's important that we all, you know, as parents and coaches, we all understand that with sports, we're trying to use sports to open up communication, which is a life skill. And it teaches life skills, or it exposes poor life skills. So once you get into this conversation, you'll probably see that with most young athletes, teenagers, that communicating their true feelings is pretty difficult. They're not used to it. They're used to texting people and texting friends and that kind of thing.
Emojis.
Yeah,
And I love
exactly.
emojis too, you know,
I
but
know. But yeah, so now you're going to teach your child how to communicate, how to be vulnerable, what is the ego, and how maybe an overinflated ego or underinflated ego might affect their habits, or even how they see things like fear in a match. They're scared. I'm scared to lose. I'm scared to miss, that type of thing. But
and that
I
can
think
be a difficult thing to admit for a
it
young
is.
player to admit to themselves and then to say that out loud to their parent. You know, we've spoken before about that, the courage that it takes to be vulnerable. And when you're asking a child about these issues, it goes right back to what we were talking about in the previous chapters, about that willingness to be vulnerable and to say it out loud.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big deal for these young athletes
I
to
think so. I
go
think, and it starts with modeling, right? Like
yes.
the parents being able to be vulnerable and express themselves. Kids are going to learn just by watching that. And but if we are teaching our athletes maybe exposure to fear, and fear is big, right? A lot of times people, when they're playing tournaments, and I'm talking about adults too, but we have a hard time closing out matches because we're afraid to miss. So
Right.
we revert back to push mode, right? And but
Safety.
yeah, if we can explain to the kids that they have to kind of pretend like they're a fireman, and their job under pressure is to run towards the fire, not run away from it.
Mhm.
And look, when they run in and actually play their game and trust their shots, it's important that they know they're gonna miss some on their way to winning the whole match.
Mhm.
But if they abort their normal style of play and start to push to be safe, now they're probably going to blow it, which happens more often than not.
Oh, yes, yes, it does. You go on to say, remind them that it's no accident that unshakable athletes are the way they are. It's not by chance, but by choice. So I love this idea because I think that we've all run across those people that just seem almost like machines. It's like, they,
Yeah.
I think of Djokovic, of course, would be the easy one. He is mentally, aside from just the physical being that he is, his mental toughness is up there, if not the best, definitely one of the best. So that, I digress, but I enjoyed watching the finals,
Yeah.
Wimbledon, where he was still so mentally tough, but you have the younger player, you have Alcaraz coming up, and we'll get into this later in the chapter, but there has to be inner belief. There has to be, a time to step up, and you have to, like you're saying, from modeling and the idea of dress rehearsals. And here you are on the biggest stage of your career, possibly to that point, and you're playing one of the most mentally tough, physically sound players. And, so there's certainly if he had not prepared for those small dramas, or you're up against one of the most unshakable athletes out there in the world. But you say it's not by chance, it's by choice. So let's talk a little bit more about that choice.
Well, the choice, I think, is to understand in this situation that everybody has fear. So now the choice is, how do you choose to deal with the fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, in like basic psychology, people talk about you either fight, you stand and fight like a Djokovic, you freeze, which is more of a panic mode,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or flight, which is more of a tanking. You'll see it in tennis that sometimes they're they stay on the court, but emotionally they stopped playing 3 games ago.
That's right. They've checked out. They've decided, they've already made a choice. They've made a choice that they're not going to win this match.
Yes.
And so, like you said, you know, in an extreme form, it's tanking where it doesn't even look like they're trying, you know, or you can stay out there. I mean, I remember it was Nadal and Wawrinka, and Nadal had gotten hurt, and he didn't want to concede the match because he was being respectful of the opponent. He wanted Stan Wawrinka to go ahead and win the match.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most interesting, and we've talked about momentum shifts in previous chapters as well, to see. It's almost like Nadal was, you know, like, put me out of my misery, step up, win this thing. And Wawrinka kind of froze up for a while, and Nadal went on to win the next set. And you can see him out there like suffering, and he's like, please finish this off, you know. But the competitive fire within him, he's still going to compete, even though he knows he's, you know, physically having this problem. But he's, again, the respect of, you know, I want you to go ahead and win it. I'm not going to stop the match. And so Wawrinka had to kind of overcome maybe seeing that Nadal is now hurt, and yet he loses the next set. He does go on to win the match, but it's like, that was one of the most fascinating matches to watch as far as momentum shifts. And, you know, like I said, I could sort of see Nadal suffering out there, like, please, please, go on. and Stan, it took him a minute. He had to overcome some of that drama. Like you're talking about the drama of, here's one of the best players in the world. We're in the finals. And I can't remember if it was US Open, or I can't remember which major it was, but it was not the French. It wasn't the French, but it just, to see that match, it just, that came to mind with this idea of, like you're saying, the choices that you make and how those choices become the actions. And it means committing. It has that inner belief that you can. And we'll get to this here in just a moment, but you specifically say, I'm paraphrasing, but you know, if you believe you can or you can't, you're probably right. Like, you know.
Yeah, so that's an old quote. That's a good quote. I love that one. But look, I think from the parent side, things like Jenny, you're talking about competitive fire in an athlete. Sometimes those are natural inborn tendencies. Sometimes they're not. Either way, though, it's a learned skill, right? You can learn that. You can learn how to manage the competitiveness, like even in between points. If you're looking at a parent, if you're thinking about what can I do to help my junior athlete be more competitive, it would be have them understand that in between points, they have to feel the feelings, and it's okay to be angry.
That's right.
I mean, obviously not overly crazy, but it's okay to be angry. And then they have to be able to stand still and calmly reset and get their whole mind to shift. And it is a mind shift, but they have to shift their mind to the next point and get over the drama. And that's what the top players can do. You'll see even like the Djokovic's and such, they'll get so mad, they'll break a racket. But then they don't keep playing like kids do. They stop, they calm down, they reset before they start playing again. And so anyway, that's why I think it's something that we can teach, and it is part of avoidance or exposure. And I think it's important that with parents that teach exposure every day, all the time. Anything that your child does not feel like they can do or they don't want to do, it's a battle. It's easier to do it for them, but when you do it for them, they're not learning how to problem solve. So, and that's what they need in matches, really.
Yeah, that's really getting to the heart of the matter. So the final part of the solution of this section of the chapter, you say, nudge them in the direction that the most crucial component to control in the world of competition isn't the drama, it's their reaction to the drama. And that goes to what you were just saying about, that same match that I was just talking about with Djokovic and Alcaraz at Wimbledon. At one point, Djokovic absolutely obliterates a racket. But then it's like, you can't deny your feelings. You're gonna feel. You're going to feel. And so I love that you said, if you're mad or whatever that feeling is, don't deny that you're feeling it.
Yes.
You can't, there's nothing to work with there. But if you go, okay, I'm mad, I'm going to be mad. It's okay to be mad. It's a human emotion.
Yes.
But the difference between the good players and the great players, or a difference between the good and the great, is how quickly they move on. So again, that response. So
the choice.
Yes, the choice. And so feeling the feeling and identifying that feeling, and then the freedom to feel it and know that you're validated for feeling it. You can't be like, don't be so mad. It's like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, be mad. You're mad. Sure. But how quickly can you let it go in the moment? And that's a choice.
Yeah.
And we're gonna move on. So the final part of that is, then bring to light the reoccurring drama in your athletes' matches and devise those customized solutions. And so that goes back to the conversation that we were talking about between the athlete and the parent. And so after you've gone through this process of the feeling, not denying the feeling, feel it, then let go of it. And then taking that deeper, you go, what caused the feeling? The feeling is the symptom of something deeper. Why did you feel the feeling? And you're validated in your feeling. And so the fact that you say, then bring to light the reoccurring drama in your athletes' matches and devise those customized solutions. So what is it? What is this a recurring theme? And this is a big ask of the parents, really, to go, okay, this is something that I've seen, as you say, like as the weekend coach, as the parent in a coaching role traveling to these tournaments. It requires a little bit more thought and reflection on the parent's side to go, okay, I keep seeing this. I keep seeing this happen. And so then the need to address it. And again, that takes a lot of courage on the parent side.
It does. And, a lot of parents really don't feel like open communication with themselves and their teenagers work. And there is a lot of studies that talk about why these interfamily relationships are way more difficult. And so nowadays, remember that most top players have mental coaches, not just coaches that feed balls out of the basket. Mm-hmm. And you can do that, obviously in person, or you can do it on Zoom. Mm-hmm. And there's coaches all over the country that do these type of mental coaching sessions. So don't feel like if you can't do it, or if you don't know enough about tennis and you're worried about that, then bring a mental coach into your entourage. The players like the Djokovic's, like you talk about, they spend a lot of time on this stuff. Mm-hmm. So anyway,
I think it takes, now I want to speak kind of directly to the parents watching this right now and or listening from wherever you are, that we know that even by going there with your athlete, you're being vulnerable to a point too. And so it takes courage for the parent who maybe you and your child, oh, you got this and you got that, but to really speak on that level to your child, especially when we're talking about youth, not just, if you're 8, if you're 18, same thing,
Yes.
the vulnerability it takes of the parent to go, okay, I'm seeing this happen in your matches, and I'm not starting this conversation with that to, make you feel bad. I'm saying that I see this, and let's talk about it. And then again, the word support, you want to support in this. Let's work through this together on the journey and enjoy it. And so it's such a magnanimous statement to give them the freedom to again speak freely, and the validation of the emotion, and let's talk about what's creating that drama, and know that the child isn't going to be ridiculed or criticized, that we just want to identify the problem, and then let's work together. And then the coach is involved in this as well. You go on to say that in the next few sections, that now we're going to work together, but by being open and saying, well, actually it's this. And so now admitting it to myself, and then admitting it to my parent, and then admitting it to a coach, there's so much vulnerability there. But then having that safety of my parent is going to support me and enjoy this process, and my coach is also going to support me, that is a really, really big deal.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why it's not a super easy journey. That's why I think parents need a little bit of help, which we all do.
Mm-hmm.
And, I surely did when I went through the whole cycle of being a tennis parent, and it's not easy. So, yeah, I hopefully these kind of books will help a little bit.
We move on to the next section in chapter 8. And again, I love the title of this section, where you say competitive pressure triggers, and it fits right into what we were just saying. You say competitive pressure triggers are some of the most common stressors found in junior tennis. Guiding athletes to step beyond stroke mechanics allows them to look into the face of their match time anxieties. Identifying your athlete's stressors starts here. And so in those couple of sentences, I feel like it's like a universe of ideas in there. So one of my favorite sentences in this chapter, and this is from the coaching hat that I would put on for a second, is, guiding athletes to step beyond stroke mechanics allows them to look into the face of their match time anxieties. And I just love that, because I know that so often, it's how to hit a forehand, what's your grip, what's your stance, when do you go open stance before, when do you move forward?
Yeah.
What are you driving it? Are you, hitting a defense? All those things, which are all obviously important and valid, that a deeper level is, like you say, step beyond stroke mechanics, and that allows them to look into the face of their match time anxieties. So it is such a deeper level. I just can't emphasize that enough. A player can come off and be like, gosh, my serve was just off today. Well, why? To go beyond surface level of my strokes weren't working. Why? What happened? Let's go there. And it's hard to go there. Like I said, it takes courage for the player, definitely, but also for the parent to open that line of communication, which can be scary, and then bringing in the coach. And there's your dynamic. And, for the kid to know that they're in a safe place, and the parent and the coach are in their corner, they're for them, not looking at them and just like wagging a finger, but all on the same page, and we're for you. And that is so special and meaningful, and goes beyond tennis, like we talk about all the time.
Yes. Well,
oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, in this concept and this little part of the book, and they're just little mini, 1-page sections, but there are certain pressured triggers, and some are really common. We see them all the time. Like the top 10 that are listed in the book, we see all the time. But athletes might only have one or maybe two of the 10. But if we know what they are, if we expose them, now we can work on them. So
it goes back to that word expose. Yeah, exposure.
It does, which is kind of part of the whole chapter, really. That
right, the exposure versus avoidance. If you avoid that conversation, just hoping it'll go away, it doesn't really work like that.
No, athletes carry their baggage with them until you can, lighten the load and release it. Otherwise, they're going to carry all that drama,
and it just gets heavier and heavier and more ingrained. That's the other part, that if you're not identifying it, then it's just becoming more ingrained. The longer you wait to make the change, to choose to make the change, the harder it will be. So avoiding, it's actually snowballing. So the choice to make a change is only getting harder.
Yeah. That goes back to choices and habits, right? Because like you're talking about now, poor habits, whether they're stroke mechanical, technical flaws, or they're mental or emotional habits, any of those habits, they need months to change. You're rerouting something that they're very loyal to, because they've been doing it likely for years. And so it becomes an automatic negative response. They just go to they get into the match. It's kind of weird, but when they get into a match, you can see a beautiful, fun-loving kid morph into a different identity in a tournament. And all of a sudden now they're angry and they're fearful, and they go back to that like clockwork. If we don't step up and identify the triggers, but also identify, are they internal stressors or external? Are the stressors caused by their own ego and their own inner beliefs? Sometimes they're not reality, like, I'm going to win this whole tournament, that kind of thing. Or I'm going to play at UCLA when their UTR is a 6 and theirs are all 12s.
Right.
Or it could be external stressors like parents or coaches or friends, and social media is a really big source of external pressure that I would. I think that it's important that you don't allow your athletes to go on their phone on tournament weekends, because it serves no purpose to look at other people's UTRs, and
that adds to drama, right?
Drama,
and so it's almost opening yourself up to those dramas that affect you. And so what you're saying, as far as, don't look it up, we know it's hard to put the phone down, but that's a strategy. So that's a strategy. If you're identifying social media or looking up your ranking or somebody else's ranking, or who lost to who, what are the seeds, what the seeds do, in your draw, and you're looking out, so that would be, identify, if you're getting freaked out because you're looking these things up, let's not do that, number one. But we understand that you're curious, and it's like a moth to the flame. You want to know. We live in a world of, instant answers, instant knowledge. And so that's hard. But even that, what we just described, that would be easy for me to say, but for the parent to go, okay, we're not going to do that. And but to have the solution of, okay, going into this tournament, let's not do that. So
right on.
Which leads into what you have in the solution part of this section. You say, after identifying the cause of your athlete's panic It's time to ask their coach to help plug in a customized solution. Every topic that causes pressure needs more exposure. The problems lie in that most junior athletes avoid the difficulties they should be focusing on in hopes that they will go away. And that just stopped me in my tracks. I was like, you know, yes, on the tennis court, but then, gosh, in life too. And so, how it's so valuable. I get so excited, but it's so valuable for the young players to learn these skills on, if they're learning them on the tennis court and through tennis, it's just another benefit for the rest of their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that hoping that something will go away, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And I think even if folks that are listening to this podcast, if they did grab a copy of this book, and if they could sit with their athlete and just circle the some of these topics that we'll talk about, and really kind of break them down a little bit. But almost all of these topics are going to help them in their work environment when they get older.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, like even giving a presentation and being able to handle that. That's like a performance, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah, how they prepare, how you prepare for that.
Yes, like we've talked about tone in the past, that how you're going to come across, whether it's a presentation or you're running for something at school, maybe student government, or whatever the case may be. These such important topics. So along with this idea of the competitive pressure triggers, now that we've defined that, the list here, and I'll go quickly. There's 10. So number 1, scoring systems / certain stages of the competition / start times. And so even in just that one, I know that we could talk forever, but the first one, scoring systems, for me, I say there were rain delays, and they need the tournament director needs to get the tournament finished, and so they changed the scoring format. Maybe they go to no ad scoring, and then the athlete is going to be like, oh, I hate no ad scoring. Oh my gosh, well, what's the plan? What serve are you going to go to, or what return are you going to go to? What are you going to do if you get to that deuce point? And that whoever wins that point wins the game. And so it becomes incredibly important. So that's a competitive pressure trigger. That very first one, I was like, yes, absolutely. And so you used the word panic, and I'm so glad you did, because I think that, again, I love words, but that word panic resonated with me, because I would panic on the court, even in college. And to have a plan to, again, address the panic, like, why are you all of a sudden missing all your backhands in the net? It's not your backhand. What you're at the point that's no ad, you're at the deuce point, and what's your plan? What's your serve? What's your go-to? If you don't have that default setting, then you're going to panic, because we panic when we don't know what to do, and we feel like we're out of control. In my mind anyway. So that's just the first one.
No, it's true. And if I can add something to that first one, it's meaningful, of course, that you talk to your athlete about any scoring systems, right, that they are uncomfortable with. But if it is a no ad, which we see a lot, we want our athletes to understand there's a big difference between a positive game point or a negative game point, or one of these no ad neutrals. They have to have a plan on these mega points, these big points, right? They should be walking to the back fence, standing still.
Yes.
Actually even kind of monitoring their physical energy, their mental tactical plan, like you're talking about, their emotional energy. Are they really ready to fight? And they should be doing this before they have a plan formulated and turn and walk back up to the baseline. And so most of our kids, when they have a big point or a game point, they don't realize it until after it's done. Then they go, ah, geez, that was a big point. And then I cream the return into the alley. And so, yeah, that's big. And the start times is important too. I'll give you an example. We were just working last week a lot with the California kids, and they're all going to hard courts, which is one of the big national titles, right? And sometimes they start at 8 a.m, which would be for California time, 5 a.m, for the kids going back to
That's right.
Florida. So that means they have to. Before, we're having them go to sleep here 2 or 3 hours earlier and waking up earlier. So we're having them wake up here in California at 4 a.m. the whole week before. So their body gets used to the idea that they're going to probably be playing a match at 5 a.m. And that's preparation. And these are the little things that's what gets you past these early round matches. So
absolutely. Yeah, number 2 of the competitive pressure triggers, and this one just makes me smile. The opponent's style of play / personality. I can't tell you how many times, whether it's junior tennis or adults that I work with, that will come report back to me about a match over the weekend and say, there was no pace on the ball. That's not tennis. And I can't believe I lost that match. And we talk a little bit later in this chapter about losing to a lesser opponent or perceived lesser opponent, because it's different. But, that this player that comes back and it wasn't tennis. It wasn't tennis. And as hard as it is, to be gentle, I would say, well, you were on a tennis court, right? And you were, playing points, same court, same rules, same everything. And they won. So it was tennis. It is tennis.
Right.
And so that's a situational thing, whatever, that's just.
It is. And it boils down to poor preparation, because what they're really saying between the lines is, when they say it's not tennis, is it isn't the style of tennis that I get when I take clinics or play with my friends, right? And obviously, if you're only hitting with the coach, if you're only hitting with a certain number of friends, you only see that same ball speed and spins, trajectories, and so that's why we hear it a lot. I'm so good, my kid's so good in practice, but so bad in matches. It's that same topic, right? And because they're not practicing in the manner
rehearsal.
Yeah, they're not doing dress rehearsals, right? So anyway, that's that one.
It's one quick side story. We were both at the tennis congress. I can't remember exactly which year it was. And one of the athletes in my group, we were working on, a drill of moving forward, attacking a short ball coming in. It was a doubles drill. And I don't usually feed a lot anyway. I like the live ball action, but of course there are times to feed. And so I actually was feeding a short ball where they have to start behind the baseline and what are you going to do with it? And there was one player in the group that kind of stopped the drill for a moment and said, your feet is too soft. I want you to feed it harder at me. Don't like nail it at me, but I don't like this. The feet is too soft. And it took me a moment. I had to kind of, you're on the court in the moment. And so it's like, okay, again, I'm reacting to, now I'm having a reaction, and how am I going to handle this? And, I want to say, well, you want me to feed the ball harder, but is that the ball that you would attack in a match? Or are you going to get the softer short ball that's basically like your hand delivered invitation to the party at the net? I am inviting you to come to the party at the net. Right. So I'm doing the soft feed on purpose because that's your invitation. If I'm gonna hit the ball harder or faster or whatever that you're wanting me to feed you, you're kind of missing the point of the drill.
Yeah.
Because is that the ball that you would really attack if I'm going to hit it hard at you at the baseline?
Yeah.
That's not the point of the drill. Anyway, that was an aside. But we move on. Okay. Number one, we talked about scoring systems. Number two, talked about opponent style of play. I'm going to go through a couple of these quickly because we have other important things to get to in this chapter. But number three, you list gamesmanship, another big one, draws and seeding. We talked a little bit about that a moment ago. Spectators, cameras, environment and conditions. You talked about that, windy, hot, cold, jet lagged, or have to get ready to be up earlier than I want to be, and then it rains and it's getting late into the day, and now I've been up since whenever, and I'm finally going on the court, and waiting can be exhausting. Court surface is number 7. Number 8, current fitness. This one's really important. They're all important, but this one is again really resonated with me. But so current fitness, energy levels, pain tolerance threshold, those are really important ones to address, because of the variety of feelings that go along with those. Number 9 is untrustworthy mechanics, and number 10 is outcome anxieties. And that's one that we've talked about before numerous times, instead of focusing on the outcome, be in the present. But anyway, you go on to say, any topics that cause the athlete stress should be discussed. Solutions to overcoming the athlete's pressure triggers should be put into place. And so that really encapsulates what you're talking about in this section, in this chapter, with your list of 10 competitive pressure triggers, but then leaving it open-ended to say, once you have this conversation with your player, they might come up with something not on this list that you weren't thinking about at all, because you're not them.
And it does open up communication, right? And that transparency is what you want with an entourage, right? A parent, coach, athlete. Without transparency and without open communication like that, improvement really does stall pretty quick. So I think that's meaningful that everybody's open to communicate.
Well, that's
not just about strokes, right? But about really what's causing these anxieties.
Because it goes back to what you were saying, if you're going to blame it on strokes or mechanics, that's very surface level, or blaming, the other person was cheating, or, whatever the case may be. But yeah, so those definitely need to be discussed. And so that's the perfect segue into the next section. And I love the title of this section, that comfort is where dreams go to die. And so we get into the growth cycle of the athlete, and you talk about an archer's bullseye.
Yes.
I'm incredibly visual, and I like to draw, but not that this is special, but even in my notes here, I have a little
oh, very nice.
do a little bullseye diagram.
That's great.
Where the growth cycle, so you have that outside black ring that is the comfort zone, and then you have the next ring in, that's the blue ring, and that's the fear zone, and then the next one is red, and that's the mastery zone, and then right in the middle, the yellow is the management zone. And I just immediately, that's why I got all excited and wanted to draw my little diagram and use my school supplies. but the comfort zone is right there next to fear. And so you might kind of put one foot in and try a little bit, but you're not completely committed. That fear zone from the comfort zone idea is just massive. But then on the other side of the fear zone is mastery. And so we talk about able and willing. Like, are you able, are you willing to go through those fears, identify and address those fears, not just to yourself, which is hard enough, but then with a parent and a coach. To adults, that's hard, but then that mastery zone is there, so it's like you get through the hardship and you get to the prize.
Yeah.
And then at the final level, now you're managing. And that's when, it's almost like if somebody's dieting, you start and you say, I have a goal of losing 20 pounds or whatever. And then it's like, well, are you willing to not eat ice cream every night? Or, that,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. And then, so you get through that fear of, again, making a change, a choice, if it's in your diet, your nutrition. And then, okay, you start to see results, but then and there is another phase, because you can't just keep losing weight forever if you're losing
Yeah.
So it gets to a point where it's a maintenance program. So you've gone through, I need to lose 20 pounds. I'm deciding to get outside my comfort zone, make the changes that I need to make to lose this weight. And then once I've done that, hopefully it's a life change. Otherwise you get that yo-yo. And so you've mastered it, and then you just maintain. Then you get to live in that place where you wanted to lose 20 pounds. It was hard. It was scary. You made the changes, you got it, and now you maintain it. So it's sort of, that made sense to me, but I just love, like I said, I'm so visual. So again, I'm
That's good. Yeah.
being, you say top athletes have to manage the tools they've mastered. So tell us a little bit about how you came to this conclusion.
Well, all their tools are, if you look at the tools of the trade, there's hardware and software, and the hardware is their strokes and athleticism, right? So they need the full tool belt of strokes if they're going to play college ball, which means obviously their primary and secondary stroke. So not just a forehand, but 6 different forehands, like short angles, high and heavy, slices. So that's the idea about athletes have to realize that there's a little bit of truth to this 10,000 hour rule, which is to get to be world class at something. And if you're playing D1 college, you're pretty much close to world class right there. So to be world class, it's 20 hours a week for 10 years is the average. It doesn't mean that it's always like that. Obviously, some kids take a lot more time. Some kids can do it in 5,000 hours if they have better quality over quantity of training. Mm-hmm. So that's big. But once they do, get through the uncomfortable part of this of the phases, now they do have all their tools. So now when they get into matches, it's kind of fun because now they just have to manage what tools they're going to use on that day, which I love that. That's super fun when you can coach an athlete that has all their tools, but it's pretty rare for a younger age. Mm-hmm. So athletes have to kind of realize, and parents too, though, that you can't keep them in a tournament cycle while you're rerouting strokes or making changes. Because what happens when you reroute is, let's say they have a certain level of a stroke. Once you start making changes, now the old motor programs die, so they don't have them anymore.
Yeah. It gets worse before it gets better.
It does, right. And then the new ones aren't there yet. So if you put your child into a tournament 3 weeks into changing their strokes, what they're going to say is, well, I know what, Coach Jenny said, but I'll start that tomorrow because I am not losing to Harold over there. And so they go back to their old mechanics that's trustworthy, even though it might not be in their best interest in the long run. And so they go back, and change is sometimes difficult for most people. So that's the concept. If you are going to make some good changes, take them off the tournament trail a little bit, give them time to digest the changes, give them time to do repetition and practice matches first.
That's right.
Before you put them back, under stress when they're being judged, that kind of thing.
I remember a few years ago, I was working at a club, and our director was a world class former tour player. Phenomenal. I learned so much from this individual, but there was one thing before one of the bigger tournaments for Alabama, or the Southern section. A decision was made to change a particular kid who was going to be a pretty high seed, a talented young player, been struggling some with some backhand mechanics. And this other coach, like 2 weeks before this tournament, changed him to a one-handed backhand.
Wow.
And we're talking about a young, yeah, yeah. We're talking about a young player too. I think he was in the 12s maybe at the time. But like I said, this was a big tournament. He's going to be seeded. He's played most of these players before, and so he goes out there, and I give him some props for. He starts the match with the new one-handed backhand, and then I could just see it on his face. I could just, and I'm going, oh no, I see this thing get spiraling, and he loses to a player that he should not have lost to, or well, anyway. And what did he do in the middle of the match? He abandoned the one-handed backhand and went back to his two-handed backhand, which also wasn't working, because now you're in that weird in between spot of,
right,
I haven't mastered this new stroke. And the old one that I was struggling with, even though that's more comfortable, that's what I've used to because I've been doing it for all this time.
Yeah.
But it's not working either. And it was heart-wrenching to watch this play out with this kid,
And I think it's meaningful that parents to realize that often a high-ranked ex-tour player, they have spent 10,000 hours a week developing their skills, but those skills are very different than the skills required to teach the game. Teaching the game is a different set of 10,000 hours.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. And it's rare, but some can do it. Some have both. And there's some wonderful, great ex-players that are
you know all these guys and
yeah,
you know these folks that have been able to bridge that gap between,
they can wear both hats.
Yes, between their mastery and their experience and what they see. But it goes back to something we've talked about in past chapters, where you have to meet the player where they are. You have to, and so where this player was 2 weeks out from a tournament where he's going to be a high seed. He needs to do well. It's a qualifying event for the next event. And, so to be able to meet the player where they are would have been a more positive outcome for that player.
Yeah, I think so too. And look, it's common out there, but it's called poor periodization, which is knowing not just how to coach, but when to coach and when to change things. So parents, you should know that leading into a tournament, especially a big tournament, that's not the time to make dramatic changes, like changing a stroke mechanics or adding a new fitness regimen the week before, because that just pretty much guarantees your child's going to be sore and can't move come Saturday.
That's right.
It's you'll see it. I mean, last time I did poor periodization, I took these guys at a national tournament. We went to this all-you-can-eat Indian buffet at lunch. And some of them have never eaten there before. That's one of those, and they all lost, and it was my fault. But nobody could move after lunch. But so yeah, don't tell anybody. But yeah,
it's just between us. No,
yeah.
You say common issues occur when the athlete would rather remain moderately uncomfortable yet safe, instead of dealing with the uncertainties that would make a real change in their life. And you just go, I had to sit back just now, I sat back and was just like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's I'm going to read it one more time and then we'll move on. But Common issues occur when the athlete would rather remain moderately uncomfortable yet safe instead of dealing with the uncertainties that would make a real change in their life. That's great.
Well, thank you. So it's our job as parents to teach a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset, right? That everything in your life and your skill sets can be improved if you're willing and open to improve.
Mhm.
But some people don't have an open growth mindset. They have a fixed mindset. And so making those changes for those people could be a little bit difficult. So
to finish out this section, and I know our time is running short. I just looked up and I went, oh my gosh. But improving your athlete's performance starts by understanding the growth cycle. Once the pain of losing to an inferior opponent overrides the pain of change, the prognosis is good for quick improvement. And you say, from your mentor, Vic Braden, who I also had the great pleasure of meeting many years ago. One more time, once the pain of losing to an inferior opponent overrides the pain of change, the prognosis is good for quick improvement. So I know we're going to have to leave it there for today, but that's actually a really beautiful place to wrap this one up. We might have to do a part 2 because there's much more to delve into within chapter 8. But anyway, leaving it with that note from Vic Braden, I think is actually a perfect way to go.
Yes.
So final thoughts, Frank, before we let you go. I know you're about to jump back out on court.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I want to quickly thank you again for your time, as always, and sharing your wisdom, through the books. We're excited about the new encyclopedia bundle that is coming soon. So stay tuned on that. And you can find Frank's other books on Amazon. We hope you enjoy this. We're on YouTube, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for joining us. And this is chapter 8, part 1. Frank, thank you so much. Any final thoughts?
Thanks, Jenny. No, I think we're good. I really enjoy this stuff, and I enjoy hearing the insights and the stories because you bring them to life. So that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, to everyone out there, again, feel free to contact us. Can reach out. I'll put it in the comments. You can reach Frank, who so graciously is open to, say, hey, yeah, reach out. Let's talk about it. So thank you for that openness as well. And we'll have to leave it there for today, folks. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Signing out, chapter 8.